Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior corporate leader and an author from Bangalore, India, Mr. Devarajan. Dev, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. Pleasure
Thank you.
to engage with you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dev is the former managing director of Tata Elxsi. He's also an author of a book titled Designed to Win, and we'll be talking about his book today. But before we come to your book, a few questions for you, Dev. You became one of the youngest directors in the Tata Group. What early experiences or decisions most accelerated your leadership trajectory?
Uh, well, by the time I joined Tata Elxsi, I was already about 25 years in the tech industry.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of assuming leadership positions over time. I started as a sales executive or marketing executive in HCL, and I was about the 65th employee or something.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
It was like a startup for me. And from then on, I grew. So I was not it's wrong to say I was a non-leader by the time I joined Tata Elxsi. I was a leader. I was hired as general manager, sales and marketing. And then, the story of Tata Elxsi, for those who have not read the book and for those who have read the book, I'm sure you know, it had very turbulent times in the beginning. And the reason for my joining them or for them hiring me was to straighten out the company and rebuild its growth strategy. So because I was GM sales and marketing and I was building the strategy and we kind of were leveraged to take off, that's the time they saw that I had these qualities and they elevated my position. And I became one of the youngest directors in the Tata Group. Yeah.
Amazing. You balance technology, business, and creativity, including photography. How has this multi-dimensional thinking influenced your leadership philosophy?
So, you asked me actually two questions rolled into one.
Yeah.
So if you talk about business and technology, well, my business was technology at Tata Elxsi. So,
Right.
and technology was my business because we were not like the run-of-the-mill other tech companies who were doing enterprise kind of business and not technology business. So that way it was a combined thing for me where the whole focus, leverage and pivot of Tata Elxsi was technology. That's what made us different. That's what is still different at Tata Elxsi. And photography was my hobby, right?
Okay.
So I started from my teenage days when I fumbled upon a camera and started working with that and having fun. Then became a serious hobbyist, then a very, very serious hobbyist. So that's how my photography, it was a parallel run, I would say, along with this. It never kind of intermingled with each other. However, some of the traits, some of the nuances that I enjoyed in photography, I could leverage that in business. Things like, net, you bring everything into focus, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's photography or your job, right? Yeah.
Very interesting. Dev, let's come to your book now, Designed to Win, which clearly is your journey of Tata Elxsi. When you first took charge, what was the harshest reality you encountered that outsiders would never see?
Okay. One is Tata Elxsi was all in the wrong market, and nobody knew that except people inside and people who saw it inside. People who are already inside didn't know it was in the wrong market. I would say it was not in the right market. That's a better way to put it. And financially, we were in very pitiable a shape. And like we had zilch revenues, no profitability, in fact, deep in the red. And if you have a blend of these two, you have a team which needs to get motivated, needs to get, charged up to do what is meant to be done.
Yeah.
So I would rank it as the market was wrong, financially we were wrong, and the team was weak because of lack of motivation. But
Fascinating.
they were very, a very powerful, very uh, astute kind of a team, who knew it all but didn't know how to go about it.
So would you
Mhm.
say that these were the three structural problems that you had to solve first?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and solve it all together.
Okay.
It's not
Okay.
one after the other. It was all together. Yeah.
So tell me a little
Hmm.
bit more about how you went about solving these three structural problems.
So they ran parallelly, and because just to share with you and the audience, there was a moment in time when we were actually within a couple of years of my joining, we were almost running into Chapter 11.
Hmm.
Brink of
Yeah.
bankruptcy, as we
Yeah.
call it, and we had to bail the company out of that. And there was very little choice on the table, except for the fact that we had to build a rights issue around this company,
Hmm.
and that's the only way to bail it out because
Hmm.
we had borrowed more than we could chew, and we couldn't service the loan that we had. So shareholders, commitment to invest again in this company on a one-to-one rights
Hmm.
issue was what bailed the company,
Hmm.
much against what Mr. Tata wanted to do. He was actually skeptical whether people would even subscribe to that rights issue, but they did
Hmm.
because we had the Tata brand
Correct.
behind us,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So we did that. That was a big parallel activity. And then we were not we were a little late in the game as Tata
Hmm.
Elxsi. There were other seasoned players already in the market.
Yeah.
You had the big wigs like HCL and Wipro and TCS and
Hmm.
Infosys already playing the game. So we couldn't play the game they were playing because we would be far behind because they
Hmm.
had the leading edge, and we had to play it different. So one looked at an opportunity which is completely different and new to what others were doing.
Hmm.
So I said, hey, we cannot succeed in this game if we became an also ran.
Hmm.
So we looked at, very radical opportunities. So we got into design-led engineering, animation,
Hmm.
special effects, pharma and bio modeling for pharma companies
Hmm.
and research, service the defense and the space with simulation systems to help
Hmm.
them. So
Hmm.
these were the four trajectories that we took up on
Hmm.
ourselves to say we will create these markets. There was no market, so
Hmm.
we had to create the market
Hmm.
and get the customers to adopt and adapt into these markets. So that
Absolutely.
was a huge challenge. That was a huge
Absolutely.
challenge. And
Absolutely.
the third
Hmm.
third thing that you talked about was on the people front. So when we said we will do business in these markets, it created an opportunity and motivation for the team because they were starting to do things they'd never done before,
Hmm.
and they couldn't do it anywhere else.
Hmm.
So that is what motivated my team.
Hmm. Hmm. So, clearly you were in a position where you were, as you say, on the brink, and then you took this call to pivot completely. How
Yes,
deliberate was this pivoting versus evolving into it? Because money, people, organization, culture, everything needs to evolve to be able to
correct.
pivot so significantly to make it the
Yeah,
success that you made it.
yeah. So it was not a step function. So it didn't happen overnight. It was
Mhm.
something that, like you rightly said, we had to evolve into it, but we couldn't kind of be in the evolutionary
Mm,
process all
mm,
along. We had a timeline, a guidance, and a goal to be achieved.
yeah.
So we had to accelerate up to a point, but not accelerate so much that we are left clueless as to what we are doing.
Mm,
So it was not easy because these were markets which were not existent. So
correct.
when you create a market, you have to create a conviction uh, with your prospective customer.
Correct.
Then once you create that conviction, he kind of bets on you. Then he realizes that, okay, he's bought your solution, but he has no way to, put that in practice because there's no people. That he doesn't have people to run that, say engineering led solution or an animation led solution. He has nobody to help him run that
Right.
enterprise. So
Right.
we had to create an eco space of trained human resources.
Hmm.
So that was the parallel run that was
Correct.
happening. It
Correct.
was not just, it was a humongous exercise to create the people resource,
Hmm.
to run that market that you again
Correct.
created, and then show them that it works.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Most human beings, they've like status quo, or they even like
Hmm.
status quo anti. You went into something to turn around an organization and also create a new market and create new skills. What did you do differently in this entire execution process? Because a lot of organizations that attempt to turn around fail.
Yeah, because honestly, I would attribute it to a fantastic second line that I had
Mm,
of leaders who actually uh, were ready to bet on me, bet on my strategy, and it was not just my strategy. I even said it's our strategy, and we are going to do it for the world, do it for
mm,
this country,
mm,
and that's how it started. But there were a lot of pockets of activities which again ran parallelly. We had to do, say, to convince, say, a Bajaj Auto or a Tata Motors that design-led engineering would work.
mm.
You had to benchmark with them, no,
Yeah.
and show them a proof of concept on how it works. So that was one exercise.
Mm,
Like I said, create an ecosystem of trained resources. So we tied up with some companies.
mm,
Say, let's say a National Institute of Design in Ahmedabad, IIT Bombay, their industrial design center, saying we will provide you the resources in terms of computer systems, software, and we would build a curricula for you, and you churn out these people. We are willing to come and teach part time in
mm,
your institutes and create that ecosystem of people.
mm,
And then even at some engineering automotive companies decided to invest in creating training centers
mm,
to create this infrastructure.
mm,
So all that was happening, each one was happening in pockets, and it kind of synergized into a holistic solution and offering later.
mm, mm.
So my mantra actually was give the audience what they want before they know what they need,
Absolutely.
and that's what makes you a winner. you
Very
know?
well said. Very
Yeah,
well said.
yeah. Hmm.
But then tell me, what leadership behaviors did you have to personally unlearn during this turnaround?
Honestly, nothing,
Okay.
because I was also learning to be a leader. So this journey was mine too.
Mm,
So it was not that I had to unlearn something and relearn something. I wouldn't say at 39 when I joined Tata Elxsi, I was a born leader. I was a manager of
mm,
people. I managed businesses, but managing people, managing a business is different from being a leader.
mm,
So that is something I evolved into thanks to my excellent mentors within the Tata Group. People like Mr. F.C. Kohli, who was founder of TCS. He
mm,
was my excellent mentor. He was
mm,
my chairman of the board also at that point in time.
mm.
And you learn from your peers also. It's not
Absolutely.
that leaders only learn from their, seniors and gurus.
Mm,
My
mm.
peers taught me a lot of things,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we had a fantastic relationship as a team. So everybody on first name basis. There's nothing like, I'm there and you guys are all here down here.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
never like that. It was
Yeah.
never like that. You know?
Very interesting.
So,
You
mhm.
also worked on cutting edge areas like EVs, OTT, and embedded systems.
Mhm.
How did you build a culture that consistently stays ahead of the curve?
Yeah. So that's how we started. When we started, like I said, there was no market as such, that what we were planning to address was not
Mm,
existent. So we started there. So I would say we already had a certain kind of edge. And this starvation in the team to do something more, do something different, do something leading edge was always, I would say, stayed ignited. So they
mm,
always wanted to be ahead of the curve. And everybody likes to do things which others have not done, likes to do things which is new. They're always learning new technologies, new attributes. And we started working with customers who bet on us, who were also ahead of, say, our first series of overseas customers were all Japanese companies. And Japanese are known for being ahead of the curve when it comes to high tech. And they taught us a thing or two, everybody talks about, say, an MPEG-3 and an MPEG-4, the video format and audio format. We worked with Japan to create an MPEG-4 classification almost 28 years ago.
Amazing.
So, and on MRIs and medical imaging, we created certain routines there, which the world had never used before, Yeah.
And what early signals convinced you that electric vehicles would become a major opportunity? Because when you probably pivoted into the area of electric vehicles, the world was just about beginning to understand what they were. And certainly in India, they were.
Yeah. So there are things on this. See, when you're working with automotive industries and we never had a, buy-sell relationship with our customers. I always told my team, it's a relationship you're building for life. And if you do it that way, your contract continues forever. As long as you're able to deliver with quality, deliver with substance, nothing, will rock the boat. So say when you're working with a Nissan in Japan or with the European makers and the big three in Detroit, you see what they are doing. And, you can see that these are evolving technologies. And to be honest with you, when you talk about EV and autonomous vehicles, I don't know whether you know, but way back in 87, when I was working for a Tata company, one of our promoter directors was Dr. Raj Reddy of Carnegie Mellon University. He was director of the Robotics Institute and AI at Carnegie Mellon in the mid 80s. He was awarded the Legion of Honor by the French president for creating an autonomous car which ran on the streets of Paris.
Wow.
87. And he told us, I've heard this from him, we invented this car and it can go at 20 kilometers per hour, but it can only go along the curb of the road. It can recognize a traffic light, red light or a green light. And depending on that, we can make it turn left or right. That was the advancement of the technology then. So all these things don't happen overnight. Correct. They evolve. Correct. And if you keep in touch and keep your pulse on the evolution, you can stay ahead of the game.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
With my next question for you now, Dave, is with AI now transforming industries, how would you apply the Tata Elxsi playbook in today's AI-driven world?
So AI has got a lot of hype now. So it's not a step function. It started, the curve of AI started a few years back,
Absolutely.
From the time we started Alexa and Siri to tell us things, and ask for what the weather is like and play me this song. And these are all fundamentals of AI.
Absolutely.
And deep diving into data warehousing and culling out information is what Google has been doing for a long time. They're streamlining all that and, putting it in a bucket and enhancing what it's capable of doing. And the word AI is becoming a mantra of times.
Correct.
So all these are evolutionary technologies. Like I said, just to answer your earlier question, as long as, you're riding the wave and you're ahead of the curve, adoption and adaption is not a big deal.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. What differentiates Indian technology firms that succeed globally from those that remain commoditized?
Commoditized. Every technology, when it becomes adopted by the masses, it becomes commoditized, right? So it's not, so if you're at the leading edge again of that technology and you're doing something, you're still not commoditized. But the idea is ultimately to make it commoditized. Otherwise, how does the common man, embrace these technologies. I'll give you a simple example. Take me a couple of minutes. In our early days in Tata Elxsi, we had this. We were dealing in the animation market, and there was this company out of Canada which had the best and the biggest and the best animation software possible. It was a company called Alias Wavefront, and we were integrating that software and providing solutions to the animation market in India. Companies like Ramoji Film City in Hyderabad, Annapurna Studios, Prasad Productions in Chennai, UTV in Mumbai, Prime Focus, TV18, all these are animation studios which got incubated from Tata Elxsi. So all these ran this Alias product. Then we had a discussion with the CEO of Alias saying, these softwares are all $40,000-$50,000 a piece and sit on graphic workstations, which are again $50,000-$60,000 a piece. So you're talking about an investment of $100,000 for one seat in a studio, animation studio. And with the forward technologies of PCs, which were evolving then with the NVIDIA graphics card and all that, I was suggesting to the CEOs, can we downport this studio product onto PC platforms with these high-end graphic cards? In other words, commoditize it.
Right.
Okay. And we had a lot of discussions, and I'm not going into the matter of how we did it.
Yeah.
But it's all in the book. It's a very exciting story. And we did it in Bangalore, ported it on a $3,000, $4,000 platform, and the software was priced at $5,000. So instead of a $100,000 solution, you got a $10,000 solution. And because it was done in India, done in Bangalore, the Alias, the company there, and the executives from there and me had a discussion saying it was incubated here, birthed here. So can we give it an Indian name? So we called it Maya.
Oh, wow.
The animation software. You may have heard of the name Maya.
It's
still prominent. It's still prominent even after 25 years
of
its existing. And so Alias was not a commoditized product. Maya became a commoditized product. So today, any school, any college, any studio, they all use multiple copies of Maya.
Wow.
So it's how you commoditize. No, it's
absolutely.
not.
Absolutely. Well said. Time for two more questions for you, Dev.
Yeah,
if
sure.
a young entrepreneur reads your book, Designed to Win, what are the top 3 lessons they should internalize?
Why young entrepreneur, CXO, old entrepreneur? I think it's the book is meant for everybody. I think what is important is always, you should dream of building something world class. That's the first step. And they should also realize, because what you see in movies, what you read in books, and what you hear as stories from successful people, it's always like they say, the history is written by the winners. So likewise, the people who have won tell stories, but they never tell you the downside. That the road is not a straight line. The path to success is not a straight line. It's very messy, it's painful, full of potholes, full of setbacks. But if you stay true to your purpose, and if you build the right team and you keep pushing forward, and you're true to your purpose, and then you can create something very extraordinary.
Correct.
So that is very important. And the story in the book itself is not a very polished story. It's a very unvarnished story of how this company came about and became what it is today.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And my last question for you, if you were to summarize the Tata Elxsi journey in one powerful leadership lesson, what would it be?
So there is no glamour in success. The glamour comes after the success. So that is what we should, people talk about startups, people talk about innovation, and it's all, hunky-dory and glamorous. That's after the incident. So during the incident, it's full of pitfalls, like I said earlier. So it is important to have that commitment, that perseverance, and work as a team don't work as a solo game player. No, you're not playing tennis here. You're playing football. You're running with the team all through. And that is very important. And at the end of it, I would say the icing of this around this whole thing is a spirit of passion
Absolutely.
that you should have.
Absolutely.
And if you have all this, you'll surely achieve your goal.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And on that note, and with these amazingly wise words that you've given, I just want to say, Dev, thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey, about your book, Designed to Win. I just loved the way you so simply said, dream to build world-class products. Success is not a straight line. Stay true to your purpose. And finally, which is so true, glamour comes later. People forget the incredible amount of effort
Very
that
true.
goes into building an organization. Thank you for speaking to me.
Thank you.
All the
Thank you
very
so
best for your
much,
book.
Ashutosh. Yeah. It was a
Thank you.
pleasure for me too.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.